Have you ever felt like everything inside you is falling apart, as if your soul were begging for silence, even amidst the noise of the world? Perhaps you're trying to survive something you don't understand, feeling like you're losing control, silently imploding. But what if I told you that this internal collapse isn't the end, but the beginning? Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just in the process of being reborn. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." What if it's true? What if it's precisely this pain, this emptiness, this chaos you feel that's trying to heal you? What if, in your search for spiritual peace, you're avoiding the very path that leads to it? It's painful to admit, but most of us want peace without going through chaos. We want healing without touching the wound. We want light, but we flee from the darkness that precedes it. But the soul doesn't evolve in comfort. It awakens in despair. It's in the collapse of certainties, in the failure of defenses, in the silence that remains after so much screaming, that something sacred happens. You feel it because you are being called. There's an inner movement that begins when everything around you loses its meaning, when the answers that once worked no longer do, when you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's there. It's not weakness. It's not defeat. It's an invitation from your soul to come home. How many times have you asked yourself, why is this happening to me? How many times have you begged for relief when you really needed rebirth? Maybe what you feel now is not sadness, nor failure, nor the end. Maybe it's just the butterfly's dark phase, the cocoon before the transformation, the chaos that precedes peace. You didn't get here by accident. You clicked on this video because your soul is searching for answers that no one has given you, because you feel deep down that there is something greater than this pain, something deeper than what the world can offer you. And that's why today, I want to guide you to a place where few have the courage to go, the center of your chaos. But before we continue, breathe. Close your eyes for a second. Feel what is alive inside now. Don't try to understand. Just feel that tightness in my chest, that mental confusion, that urge to cry out of nowhere. It's all part of it. All of this is sacred, because spiritual peace, the true kind, the kind that calms the soul and not just the mind, comes later, after the fall, after the scream, after the surrender. It is not born of control, it is born of surrender. But nobody told you that, right? No one said that to find peace you had to lose everything you thought you were. No one said chaos isn't punishment, it's the way. So now, let me show you why you're feeling all this. Because there is a hidden reason behind this collapse, and she can change everything. Comment below if you've ever felt this way. My soul is tired, but I don't know who I am without this pain. If this phrase resonates with you, if it touches something deep, you are in the right video. Because what comes next is not an explanation, it's a mirror. What if I told you that this pain you feel isn't the real problem? What takes you the most away from spiritual peace? It's not chaos, but rather the way you try to silence him. You learn to hide your pain, to smile when everything is broken inside. You've been conditioned to believe that feeling too much is weakness, that showing yourself vulnerable is dangerous. But the truth is different. What hurts isn't just what happened to you. It's what you learn to keep quiet about. How many times have you pretended to be okay, just so as not to bother anyone? How many times have you said everything is fine, when inside everything was imploding? This is the invisible problem. This disconnect between what you feel and what you show. And here's the cruelest point. You start to get used to this emptiness. She starts to live on autopilot. She starts to erase herself, to be accepted. But inside, your soul screams. And even without understanding, you feel that something is out of place. That something is yourself. And that's why you need to listen to the end. Because this video is not just any content. It's a calling. It's a conversation between souls. And maybe it's exactly what you needed today. Oh, and before we go, don't forget to leave your like. It's a simple gesture. And if you feel like you need more videos like this, with deep and spiritual truths, sign up now. Your soul is calling, and this channel could be the space where it will finally be heard. Do you feel like you're constantly struggling to keep everything together? As if your life were a building about to collapse? As if, at any moment, everything you call stability could crumble without warning? Sometimes it's not even something happening externally. Sometimes the collapse is internal, invisible, silent, like a crack slowly opening up, deep within your soul. It's the kind of pain no one sees, the anguish you hide even from yourself. And worst of all, you begin to question whether this pain makes sense. You begin to doubt your sensitivity, your truth, your soul. Have you ever noticed how the world values those who appear strong all the time? How being vulnerable has become synonymous with weakness? And so you don this armor. You smile when you want to cry. You say you're fine when, in reality, you feel a knot in your chest. And it's in this silent game that the soul begins to sicken, because the pain you don't express, it doesn't disappear. It builds up. It turns into heaviness, fatigue, insomnia, an emptiness you can't name. This is the invisible problem. The suffering no one recognizes because you've learned to hide it too well, and the spiritual peace you so desperately seek seems increasingly distant, because deep down, you can't feel peace being someone you're not, and the inner chaos grows. Not because you're failing, but because your soul is tired of pretending, because your truth is stifled. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters." But how can you let that light in if you spend your life trying to hide it? How can you find healing if you live in denial? That's why chaos is also sacred, because it exposes what you've tried to hide for so long. It tears apart what needs to be healed. It reveals what needs to be released. Maybe you're feeling everything crumbling inside right now. Maybe nothing that once made sense to you makes sense now. Maybe you've lost people, plans, certainties. Maybe what's hurting isn't the loss itself, but how much you've lost yourself, trying to maintain control of everything. And herein lies the root of the problem. You learned to control, not to feel. You learned to survive, not to listen to yourself. How many times have you given up on yourself to fit into tight spaces? How many times have you swallowed your tears, stifled your anger, ignored your intuition? And on the outside, you carried on, functional, responsible, productive, but inside, your soul screamed. Perhaps you're experiencing this silent scream right now, this feeling of being alive, but without feeling alive, an exhausted soul, suffocated by obligations, demands, and accumulated silences. But there's something no one told you. This chaos, this internal collapse is necessary, because what you call a crisis, the soul calls a restart. When everything starts to fall apart, maybe it's just life telling you that you can't continue the same way. Maybe it's not the end. Maybe it's just the beginning of a new version of you, a truer version, freer, more connected to what truly matters. You are not alone. Many sensitive souls are waking up right now, feeling this same discomfort, this same internal pressure, as if something were about to explode, but at the same time, as if something new were about to be born. It's the paradox of the soul, dying to what you are not, to be reborn as who you always were. Spiritual peace isn't achieved by avoiding chaos. It arises when you go through it, when you accept looking within, even if it hurts, when you choose to feel instead of running away, when you begin to name what you feel instead of continuing to suffocate. The invisible problem only continues to sabotage you when you insist on making your pain invisible. Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." And maybe this is your moment, the moment you stop running, when you let the breakdown happen, because deep down you feel that you can't pretend anymore, that something needs to change, that the peace you seek out there will only come when you stop fighting with yourself. Comment below. My inner chaos is not weakness. It is my soul awakening. Your comment could be the thread that connects other souls who are also going through this moment, and it could be the first step toward listening to your own truth with more courage. The inner chaos you feel is not a sign of weakness nor divine punishment, nor the consequence of a mistake you made in the past. This silent collapse growing within you, this feeling of no longer fitting in, of not belonging anywhere, of not being able to fit in even in your own routine, is not a detour. It is precisely the path. It is the beginning of a process much deeper than you imagine. A process that most people try to avoid at all costs, but which, for some souls, like yours, becomes inevitable, because there comes a time when you can no longer sustain the superficial version of yourself. There comes a time when the soul begins to push from within. Everything you spent your life trying to keep standing on the outside, Rumi said, you have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. And this phrase, as uncomfortable as it may seem, is one of the most liberating truths of the spiritual journey, because the heart, when shielded by fear, guilt, attachment, or the need for control, becomes a prison. And when you insist on living within this emotional prison, without allowing pain to reveal its wisdom, you enter into a war with yourself. Suffering is not in the chaos itself. Suffering is in resisting the fall. It is in the constant attempt to avoid collapse when, in fact, it is collapse that must occur for something new to emerge. You're suffering because you're still trying to hold everything together with trembling hands. You still believe that controlling every detail, keeping everything under control will prevent the pain. But you won't, because this pain you feel isn't external. It comes from the soul, and the soul, when unheard, screams in strange ways. It screams in the form of anxiety, emotional exhaustion, an unexplained feeling of emptiness, spiritual confusion, and a lack of interest in life. It screams in the form of relationships that repeat themselves, cycles that close themselves, doors that no longer open. The spiritual root of your chaos is both simple and brutal. You're trying to sustain a version of yourself that's already dead, an identity based on external expectations, on narratives that aren't yours, on beliefs that didn't come from your soul, but from fear. And no matter how hard you try to make it work, your body feels it. Your intuition feels it. Your sensitivity has already understood. Only your mind still tries to control it. But there's something you may never have heard clearly. This pain is your calling. This chaos is your awakening process. Because only those who feel so deeply, only those who carry this level of sensitivity and existential discomfort, are able to access a deeper consciousness. The spiritual peace you so desperately seek is not a promise of permanent tranquility. It is, in fact, the inner space that arises after surrender. After surrender, after the complete fall of the persona. It's hard to accept this, I know, because we've been taught to be strong, to hold our ground, to keep going even when everything inside begs for a break. But the soul isn't freed through performance, it's freed through truth. And the truth is, you need to stop running. You need to stop trying to resolve the pain with more control. Because what needs to happen now isn't an external solution. It's an internal transformation. And every transformation begins with the collapse of what you no longer are. You are being called to cross this portal. And this portal has no guarantees, no shortcuts, no certainties. It has only one direction, inward, to the rawest core of your existence, where fear resides, but also love, where pain resides, but also healing, where silence resides, but also the answer. Rumi wasn't saying this theoretically. He lived it. He traversed the inner desert of the human soul, and that's why his words continue to resonate centuries later, because he didn't speak of what he knew. He spoke of what he felt. And perhaps now, you're beginning to feel it too, to feel that something greater is trying to emerge from within, that this pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to show you what needs to die, so that you can be reborn. And yes, it will hurt. It will be confusing. It will feel like you're losing your footing, but in reality, you're just letting go of what no longer supports you. And when you let go, something magical begins to happen, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Your perception changes. Your outlook changes. You begin to see pain as an invitation, chaos as a teacher, falling as liberation. So, even if everything inside you wants to run, escape, avoid, hold on, choose to stay. Stay with yourself. Stay with your pain. Stay with the silence. Because it is in this space of presence that the soul begins to whisper. And at first this whisper is almost imperceptible. But if you keep listening, it grows. It guides. It heals. Comment below. I am letting the old in me die so that the new can be born. Because sometimes what your soul needs to breathe is simply the permission to be heard. And your words now can be the beginning of that rebirth. The truth that almost no one has the courage to say out loud, and that perhaps you're finally ready to hear, is that the spiritual peace you so desperately seek won't come in the form you imagine. It won't arrive on a calm day, with clear skies and ready-made answers. It won't come while you're still trying to control every part of your story, justifying every pain, saving everything and everyone except yourself. Spiritual peace, the kind that transforms, that silences the soul in a profound and non-negotiable way, only arises when everything within you has died, but not the death that takes you away, the death that brings you back. It's the ego that needs to die, the one that insists on proving worth, on gaining approval, on molding itself to fit others' expectations. It's the pressure that needs to die, that invisible force that pushes you to be perfect, productive, infallible, even when you're falling apart. It's the guilt that needs to die, for not being able to keep what you once wanted so much, for saying no, for choosing yourself, for failing, for losing yourself. Because while the ego screams, while the pressure suffocates, while the guilt paralyzes, the soul remains hidden, locked in a dark corner, waiting for you to remember who you are. What no one tells you is that the real war was never with the world. It was always with yourself, with your truth, with your essence, with your sensitivity, because you learned that being sensitive is weak, that feeling too much is exaggerating, that listening to your intuition is naive. So, you kept quiet, you hardened, you created barriers, until the day those barriers began to crack and you didn't understand why. You believed you were losing yourself when, in fact, you were finally finding yourself. The hidden key to spiritual peace is this: stop fighting with who you are. And to do so, you'll need to let go of everything you've built as a defense. The image of strength, the persona that smiles as it implodes, the woman who solves everything while drowning in silence. The key isn't trying to fix who you are. It's allowing what's false to fall away. Because behind the chaos, there's a whole soul. A soul that just wants to be recognized. That just wants to be loved as it is, without masks, without burden, without struggle. Rumi said, "Don't settle for stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend. And your legend won't begin when everything is resolved. It begins exactly where you stop running away. When you look within and, instead of judging, start listening. Peace doesn't live at the end of the road. It lives in the decision to stop emotionally abusing yourself just to stay in places, cycles, or ideas that no longer fit you. How many times have you tried to negotiate with life? Made internal promises saying, if this passes, I'll change. If he comes back, I'll be better. If it works out, I promise I'll take care of myself. But the soul doesn't negotiate with the ego. It only accepts what is true. And what is true often hurts, but it also frees. This spiritual key isn't hidden in temples, sacred books, or gurus. It's within you. The moment you allow everything that isn't love to die. And yes, the process is frightening. Because who will you be without your defenses? Who will you be without the roles you've always played? Without the walls you've so zealously built? Perhaps at first you'll feel empty. But this emptiness isn't absence. It's space. Space for the soul to breathe. Space for the new to enter. Space for true peace to flourish. And no, it's not a peace that arrives suddenly and lasts forever. It's a peace built through the daily choice not to return to what makes you sick, to never abandon yourself again, to listen to yourself even when the world's voice screams otherwise, to embrace yourself even when you don't understand what you feel, to respect yourself even when your healing frightens those who aren't ready for their own. This peace doesn't depend on external circumstances. It arises when you stop trying to defeat yourself, when you understand that your sensitivity is strength, that your silence is sacred, that your pain isn't a flaw, it's a path. You'll only access this peace when you drop your masks, when you stop pretending everything's okay, when you allow yourself to crumble, not as someone who fails, but as someone who is reborn. Because deep down, your soul no longer wants applause. It wants truth. It wants silence. It wants to return home. And returning to yourself is always a solitary process, but never too solitary. Because when you connect with your pain, with your light, with your shadow, you also begin to find other souls who feel the same, who carry the same wounds, who are also trying to remember who they are amidst the noise of the world. Comment below, I'm stripping away everything I'm not to find who I really am. This phrase, if spoken from the heart, can become your portal to healing. It can be your silent surrender to the process. It can be the beginning of your rediscovery of the peace that has always been there, beneath everything you believed you needed to be. Perhaps, at this very moment, you're feeling the bitter taste of an end. And not just any end, but one that arrives as an invisible silent rupture, without much explanation, just the certainty that something has broken inside. Maybe it's the end of a relationship you tried to keep alive even after it had already died. Maybe it's the closing of a cycle you insisted on holding on to, even with clear signs that it no longer made sense. Or maybe it's the end of a version of yourself that, for years, was the only way you knew how to survive. And now that it begins to crumble, everything feels disoriented, as if you're floating in a void. You feel an internal tear, a pain that's not easily explained, that isn't always perceived by those around you, a pain that doesn't bleed but corrodes. You wake up with a tight chest, try to distract yourself during the day, fill your time, smile when you need to, but deep down, you're fighting a silent grief. A grief for what you were, for what you believed in, for what you built with so much effort, and now you need to let go. And it tears you apart, because you no longer know who you are without it. Because even though it hurts, there's an attachment to what's familiar. Even though it no longer fits you, it's still hard to let go. But listen to this truth. It's not the end that's destroying you. What truly consumes you is the attempt to keep alive something that has already served its purpose. It's the resistance to accepting that some things, however intense, were merely bridges, not destinations. It's the insistence on reliving scenes that have already ended, hoping the outcome will change. And that's where the suffering lies. When you hold tightly to something that spiritually is already gone. Spiritual peace begins to emerge when you understand that even chaos has a purpose, that not everything that ends is a tragedy, that sometimes you have to lose what holds you back to find what sets you free. And this isn't a catchphrase, it's real. It's what you begin to feel when instead of running from the void, you face it. When instead of seeking answers outside, you listen to the silence within. When, instead of clinging to the past, you begin to ask yourself who you can be now. Maybe you're now trying to save a relationship that's no longer reciprocal, a love where you give your all and receive crumbs. Maybe you're holding on to a space where there's no longer any presence, only memories. And deep down, you feel. You know you're carrying alone a story that no longer moves forward. But there's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being loved again. Fear of admitting that the love that once was a shelter is now a prison. And this fear is legitimate, but it can't stop you from being reborn. Because when you choose yourself, even trembling, even crying, even without knowing what will happen next, something inside you begins to reorganize. You begin to see yourself more truthfully. You begin to treat yourself with more compassion. You begin to realize that you no longer need to reduce yourself to be accepted, that you no longer need to hurt yourself to prove love, that you no longer need to carry what weighs you down just to maintain a semblance of stability. The same goes for friendships that no longer nourish you, for jobs that drain your soul, for habits that keep you stuck in a cycle of burnout. Trying to keep everything going, to hold everything together, to remain the woman who can handle it all, is making you sick. And it's not because you're weak, it's because the time has come to be someone else. Not a new, prettier, stronger, more productive version, but a more honest, lighter version, more connected to how you truly feel. This transition hurts. It will hurt. It will feel like you're losing everything. But you're only losing what was no longer true, what you thought you needed, but was actually just attachment, what you believed was love, but was actually neediness, what you said was strength, but was exhaustion. The soul has its own cycles, and when it senses something is pulling you away from your essence, it begins to pull, it begins to break. And if you resist, it hurts more. But if you surrender, something begins to blossom. Rumi said, "Try not to resist the changes that cross your path. Instead, let life live through you." And perhaps what's happening in your life right now is exactly that. Life trying to live through you. Your soul asking to breathe. Chaos, end, pain. These are not punishments. They are instruments of transformation. They are existence's way of reminding you that you are not here to survive for anyone else. You are here to live your truth. And sometimes this truth demands goodbyes. And there's nothing wrong with feeling pain over that. Loving what needs to be left behind isn't weakness. Missing what no longer makes sense is part of the process. Crying for what was good and still letting go is one of the most spiritually courageous acts you can do. Because true healing isn't eliminating pain. It's accepting that it's part of the journey. It's embracing what still hurts without clinging. It's allowing the end to teach you, without needing to repeat it. If everything I told you resonates within you, if you feel that something inside you was touched, comment here. I am letting go of what is no longer mine, even if it still hurts. This sentence may seem simple, but it's a decision. It's a door you open to let your soul breathe. And perhaps as you write this, you'll realize you're already a little closer to the peace you so desperately seek. You're not broken. This feeling of being in pieces, of being lost, confused, disoriented, it's not the end of the line. It's actually the exact point where everything begins to reorganize itself. But from the outside, it still looks like ruin. It still feels like collapse. Because the soul, when it decides to be reborn, must first deconstruct everything that isn't true. And this process of deconstruction isn't pretty. It's profound. It's silent. It's a silent scream that happens inside you while the world around you carries on as if nothing were happening. But inside, everything is changing. This is where the shift in consciousness begins. When you stop seeing yourself as a mistake. When you look at chaos no longer as punishment but as polishing. When you begin to realize that you're not being destroyed, you're being reordered. Because there's a part of you that already knows, that already feels, that already understands that there's something greater guiding this whole movement, even if it's still hard to trust, even if it still hurts, even if everything inside you is tired. This part, however fragile, is the wisest part of your soul. It's the part that whispers amidst the noise of your thoughts. Keep going. Don't give up. This too is sacred. Rumi said, "Don't be content with stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend." And awakening your own legend often means walking in the dark. It's letting go of certainties. It's learning to trust what you can't yet see with your eyes, but which your soul feels with a frightening clarity. Awakening means breaking with patterns, with old narratives, with beliefs that were imposed on you when you didn't even know you had a choice. It's looking at the wounds that taught you to hide and saying, "I no longer need this to protect me." Spiritual transformation doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand revelations. It comes in small details. It comes when you choose yourself for the first time, even when you're afraid. It comes when you start saying no to what you previously accepted out of need. It comes when you listen to yourself instead of judging yourself, when you embrace yourself instead of demanding it, when you embrace yourself, even without fully understanding what you're feeling. That's when your consciousness begins to shift, when you realize it's not the pain that paralyzes you, it's the resistance to feeling it, when you realize it's not the other person rejecting you, it's you who hasn't yet fully chosen yourself, when you understand that you're not experiencing a spiritual collapse but rather a profound realignment with who you were born to be. And this, as painful as it may seem now, is a privilege, because few souls are willing to cross this portal. Few people can endure the discomfort of transformation without running back to their comfort zone. But you're here, you're feeling, you're listening, and that already shows that something inside you wants more. No more distraction, no more external validation, no more empty relationships, no more emotional survival, but more truth, more wholeness, more connection with your spirituality, with your essence, with what truly makes sense. And to experience this, you need to allow yourself to die to everything that kept you small. The shift in consciousness begins the exact moment you understand that you didn't come here just to survive. You came to be reborn. You came to be a channel of light in a world that has become sick, trying to erase its own sensitivity. You came to heal ancestral wounds, yours and those of all the women before you. You came to break the cycle of silencing, of self-abandonment, of normalized pain. You came to look your soul in the eye and say, "Now I hear you." And when you start listening to yourself, everything changes. Not because your problems disappear, but because the way you relate to them changes. You stop fighting what you feel. You stop running from pain. You stop begging for crumbs of love where there's no reciprocity. You start walking with more presence, with more awareness, with more lightness. Because lightness doesn't come from the absence of weight. It comes from the courage to not carry what isn't yours. Spiritual consciousness, when awakened, makes you see the world through different eyes. It makes you realize that what seemed like loss was actually liberation. That what seemed like rejection was merely a redirection. That what seemed like an end was actually preparation for a new beginning, more aligned with your truth. And this truth now wants to reveal itself. It wants to live within you. But you must choose. You must allow this awakening to continue. You must commit to your soul more than any external expectation, because no one can walk this path for you. But when you begin, life responds. Synchronicity appears. Answers arrive. Peace, however timid, begins to take hold. And you begin to remember. You begin to rebuild yourself not with old pieces but with new bricks made of awareness, presence, and authenticity. You begin to understand that you no longer need to live in fear of losing the other if it means losing yourself. That you no longer need to accept the love that comes with pain, the validation that comes with a price, the silence that comes with self-absence. You begin to honor yourself. You begin to take your place. You begin to awaken your own legend, not as someone who wants to be admired, but as someone who wants to be whole, as someone who wants to live with meaning, with soul, with truth. And that in itself is the most sacred way to live. If you felt all this inside you, if something in you awakened, comment here. My conscience is awakening, and I choose to follow with courage. This is your milestone, your record, your living word that transforms into action. Because the journey is not over yet. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you connected with this message. Because your soul, even amidst the chaos, recognized the silent truth that resides within. And so I want to tell you one last thing before you move on. All true peace is born after collapse. It's in chaos that you discover who you truly are. Not who the world taught you to be, but who you were born to be. If you felt that this content spoke directly to your soul, subscribe to the channel right now. Not to follow me, but to continue following your own evolution. Because here, each video is a mirror, and your journey still has much to reveal. And before you go, if this video brought you clarity, comfort, or strength, leave your like. This shows that your soul found something valuable here. Now it doesn't stop here. There's a new video appearing on the screen. Click and continue this journey with me. Awakening has no end, it only deepens. And I'll wait for you there.